Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews. And today we're standing next to a pretty important car in my book. This was supposed to mark a whole new era for Volvo not too long ago, because not more than a year and a half, Volvo said that moving forward they will be making electric cars only. And if I'm not mistaken, they said they will do that starting with 2026. However, changing client preferences and strong headwinds in the economic spectrum have convinced Volvo to postpone this bold move in my book. So, whereas the EX90 was supposed to be the spearhead of their electrified plans, well, right now they've taken a slower approach to this move, changing their deadline to 2030. But this is an important car nonetheless, because it brings to the forefront of the customer the best Volvo has to offer in terms of electric cars, and it builds on the success, might I say unexpected success, that the Volvo EX30 has recorded. As you probably already know, the EX30 is the most affordable electric car in Volvo's range right now, and it has been a sales success so far. Even though it's a premium product, it has very appealing prices all around the world. So what you will see today on the EX90 are some cues that seem to be taken from the EX30, with a combination of XC90 proportions and size, of course, and some other refined fine-tuning on this car. So today we're going to talk about what this car is, what it's aiming for, how it is to drive, and of course we will talk about the real-life range this car has in rather bad weather conditions. Unfortunately, spring is kind of cold this year around here, and as you can tell by the coat I'm wearing, it's pretty cold today. We have a maximum temperature of 10 degrees Celsius. We are running on winter tires, and we are facing some code red winds today. So yeah, you might have some disappointing results on the energy consumption front, but if you ask me, especially if we avoid the highway, because this is a big boxy car, I think the results I got were pretty impressive for a car of this size. So what kind of size are we talking about? As you probably already imagined, this is the electric version of the XC90. So it's a E-segment car, but compared to the XC90, this is actually a bit longer, almost 9 centimeters longer, with a total length of 5 meters and 4 centimeters. As for the wheelbase, it's also close to 3 meters, 2,985 millimeters. So quite a big car it is, if you will, rivaling with cars like the BMW iX or the Audi Q8 e-tron in terms of size, if we're talking about electric cars, right? But if we're talking about the number of seats this car is offering, which could be 5, 6, or 7, there's also a 4-seater available in certain markets around the world. This actually rivals with cars like the Kia EV9, yes, the Kia EV9, and the Tesla Model X. Now, in terms of changes compared to the regular XC90, well, you can notice a lot of them up front. For example, you notice that the grille has been completely blocked out to make this car more aerodynamic, and you probably already noticed that even though we do have Thor's hammers in the headlamps, they have a different shape. Now, over here and over here we have the daytime running lights, right? They look great, and I think this car absolutely looks amazing. But if you're going to turn on the turn signal, this is where it's going to happen. So not the entire Thor's hammer like it happens on the XC90. And if you're going to turn on the short beam and the high beam, these two elements over here will move, and the actual LED element will pop out. It definitely looks spectacular when you see it in motion, but as a lot of people have pointed out already, is this going to make the headlamps of the EX90 a bit less reliable on the long run? Well, we're gonna have to wait and see. But what I can definitely tell you is that the LED headlamps, the adaptive LED headlamps, definitely do a great job at night, and they absolutely work brilliant. What I did notice is that if you want to flash someone, it's going to have a bit of lag, because in order for that to work, you have to select the non-automatic high beams option inside the car, and then when you pull on the left hand stalk, you have a bit of delay between the moment you do that and the moment the car actually flashes the person in front. So yeah, that's something you need to keep in mind. Now, this car comes with 20-inch, 21-inch and 22-inch wheels, and we have the biggest ones over here, the 22-inch wheels, which definitely come with some aerodynamic add-ons to make the car as efficient as possible. I think they look great. I like the tricolor design, and I think they fill up the wheel arches rather nicely. And unlike the XC90, you do notice that this car doesn't really have those plastic cladding, around the wheel wells and on the bottom of the car, because this is not necessarily a car you will be taking off-road. This is supposed to be a more premium model used around town primarily. So yeah, you don't have that, and I think it looks even better. On the sides, you'll notice that the door handles are flush with the car, and when you unlock it, they pop out. That's something also done in order to make the car more aerodynamic compared to XC90. And furthermore, the door opening itself is not mechanically operated, but electronically operated. So basically, if you pull on the handle, there's an electric mechanism that pushes the car outwards. It's not a mechanical connection between the door handle and the release inside the door. So that's something you might want to know as well. Now, this whole area over here is also quite different compared to the XC90, because the side mirrors are frameless, so whenever you adjust them, this whole element moves on this arm, so it's quite interesting to look at. It does look more premium than on the XC90. Another plus is the fact that whenever you wash this car, for example at a self-wash car wash, you don't get those streaks running from the inside of the side mirror case whenever you leave the car wash. You probably had that issue as well. So you wash the car, you think everything's nice and done, and when you leave, a lot of shampoo falls from it and ruins the whole side of the car. Furthermore, this arm has two cameras in it, one for the rear area for the blind spot monitoring, and one for parking for the side of the car. But these cameras do have a more important part to play, because as we all probably know already, Volvo is synonymous with car safety, and they are striving to make their cars as safe as possible. To that end, the EX90 has something no other Volvo has, and very few cars on the road today have. What you see over here on the roof is a lidar. LiDAR is a laser-using radar. That's where the name comes from. And it is implemented on this car to make it as safe as possible and to allow it to become level 3 or close to level 4 autonomous in the future. For now, this LiDAR system doesn't really work in full, but it does help out with certain functions of the car. Because, as I said, this is meant to become an autonomous driving car in the future. And in order to do that, Volvo did the safe approach, unlike other manufacturers. So, for the car's safety system, it uses ultrasonic sensors, just like the parking sensors, if you will. It uses cameras all around the car, and it also uses LiDAR. So there's a 3-layer safety system. They all have certain fail-safes introduced into the safety system. Each of them is responsible for a certain area. For example, the ultrasonic sensors are responsible for the close proximity area, the cameras for medium length, and the LiDAR for long range, right? But the LiDAR is the most performance system out of all of them because it can work in terrible weather. So unlike cameras, which can be fooled by strong sunlight or maybe fog, LiDAR is impervious to those. Unless you block it out completely, it will work in a number of different scenarios. So that's the most important aspect of this autonomous driving madness we're experiencing right now. And Volvo is doing it right, if you ask me, unlike Tesla, for example, with its genius founder that seems to think that cameras are all you need in order to make your car autonomous. They are definitely not enough, and independent testing has proven that. Now, getting back to the car at hand, in the back we also have a different design, and it is very similar to the one we've seen on the EX30. So unlike the XC90, which has that traditional stoplight that runs from the top of the roofline to the bottom, we have two separate illuminating areas over here. So we have one D-pillar segment and one sitting on the car over here. I think it looks very good, and we have some surprises in the boot as well, and I'm going to tell you all about it in a minute. But before we do that, we need to talk about the technical side of things, right? So usually I would pop up the hood at this moment and talk about what hides under there, but in this case all we have is a frunk. So this is an electric car. A lot of electric cars have frunks these days, which is basically a storage area under the hood. That's why it's called the front trunk, right? So in this case, we have 45 liters of storage over there. But let's talk about the technical side of things. As I said, this is a completely electric car. So at launch, we have two versions, both of them all-wheel drive, both of them using one electric motor on the front axle and one on the rear axle. The base version, if you will, has 408 horsepower and 770 Newton meters of torque, whereas the performance version, the TwinMotor Ultra Performance by its full name, which is the one we're driving today, has up to 517 horsepower and 910 Newton meters of torque. So yeah, it's quite a lot. It will do 100 kilometers an hour in 4.9 seconds, whereas the less powerful version will do it 1 second slower. So plenty of speed, plenty of power for all your needs. At the same time, the battery in the floor is the same on both models. It's a 111 kilowatt hour battery that has a usable capacity of 107 kilowatt hours. So quite a big battery, and because of that, this car is also quite heavy. So it tips the scales at between 2.7 and 2.8 tons, depending on the configuration you go for. So the maximum usable weight of the car is 3.4 tons. So quite a big and heavy car. And if we didn't have those aerodynamic add-ons on the wheels, you would probably also notice the huge brakes behind them. The battery can be recharged at up to 250 kilowatts. So chargers up to 250 kilowatts, but that's the maximum charging power. The average charging curve is 170 kilowatts on this version and 160 kilowatts on the 408 horsepower version. So that will charge a bit slower, but overall they will be charged from 10 to 80% in about half an hour. And all cars come with a heat pump. All cars come with a conditioning system for the battery in order to recharge it as fast as possible depending on the weather. So the battery needs to be cooled down or heated up depending on the temperature. Considering the temperature we're experiencing today, it would probably need to be a bit heat up. There will be another base version launched in the near future, and that will be the rear-wheel drive version with 280 horsepower and a slightly smaller usable capacity for the battery at 101 kilowatt hours. So a 6 kilowatt hour difference, and it would probably be a bit slower to recharge, but that's not a big deal in my book, because this car proved to be quite efficient. And I actually think that the rear-wheel drive 280 horsepower version will be the one to get. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm crazy to say that, but I think you don't really need 400 or 500 horsepower on what is basically a family car at the end of the day, because you're not going to buy an EX90 and go drag racing on or carving through canyons with it, because it's just not done for that. On the suspension front, I was surprised to learn that despite its massive weight, because no matter which version you get, this is a very heavy car, you don't get air suspension as standard. It's an optional extra. It's about 2,000 euros more. I would totally take it. This car has it. It comes with 2-chamber air suspension, and it is absolutely sublime, even on these 22-inch wheels. Now, before we get in the car, we need to talk about the way you can actually do that. So the car is meant to be used primarily with the Volvo app on your phone to open it and close it and so on. And you can automatically open and close just by approaching with your phone in your pocket. But if that's not your cup of tea, you can also use a card like this one. You can touch the door with it like this, and you can open and close the car with it. Also, if that's not okay for you, you can also use this. This is basically the car's key, which is nothing more than a sensor, right? So it works exactly like the key card. So you can just touch the door handle and the car will open and close. Now, let's open the trunk because we have a lot to talk about compared to the XC90. Because if you think this car is identical to the XC90, well, you would be wrong. For a number of reasons. For starters, the boot has a different setup, and that's because this car is electric. We have a lot of storage space under here, and if you raise all the seats up, because this is a 7-seat configuration, the space you get left with over here is 350 liters. But unlike on the XC90, where raising or lowering the third row seats is done mechanically, this has an electric control system. So these two buttons allow you to raise or lower the rear suspension. This is for the hook and this is for the seat. So basically you press on the button and the seat raises. The same goes for the one on the left side. Only the headrests have to be adjusted manually, and of course you can press on the button and do the same in reverse. So when you have all the seats folded, the third row seats folded, you have 669 liters of space over here in the back. If you fold all of the seats, you get up to 1900 liters of space. So those sitting in the third row will have cup holders, USB-C chargers, right, on both sides, climate control, and some sensors that will detect if you leave someone or maybe an animal in the car for each seat inside. If you do that, if you forget someone inside the car, it won't lock and it will warn you that you've left someone in the car. And if you're wondering just how many things and how big of a thing you can insert inside this car, well, just like on the EX30, you have a guide over here that tells you what kind of things will fit in here. So quite nice overall. Now let's go on the second row of seats. Unfortunately for you guys, I'm not gonna hop in the third row right there to show you just how a tall, chubby person like myself fits. I can tell you that it's the same amount of room as on the XC90, so not exactly fit for adults, but quite okay for children. Now, in terms of build quality and materials used, there are some changes and they apply to the design as well. So for now, on the EX90, you cannot get real leather. So what you see here is artificial leather, which is called Nordico. It's made using recycled materials and so on. It actually feels really nice to the touch. It looks great. My only concern is the long time longevity, viability of this leather, how it will withstand the test of time. We can only see that in we'll only be able to see that in the future. We also have buttons over here for the same rear seats in the back. So if you don't want to go to the trunk to raise or lower them, you can use the buttons over here, right? Now, over here we also have this plastic material that actually feels quite nice to the touch. It's synthetic leather as well. We have a stitching over here as well. So the materials feel good to the touch. The only concern I have is related, as I said, to the long-term longevity. The door panels have decent storage space, and we have ambient lighting inside this wood trim that looks absolutely great at night. I'm going to add some videos over here with the way they look at night. We have the Bowers & Wilkins sound system on this car, and it's the speakers are covered with aluminum covers, and they actually feel very great, very nice to the touch. I'm going to talk about the way they sound a bit later, right? So these are the rear seats, plenty of room, and you can adjust both the seat back in different positions, and you can also slide the seats individually to give yourself more room or less. This is the access to the back. Well, I think it should be enough if you're on the slimmer side of things. And of course we do have an armrest over here. It actually looks good. On this car we don't have the adjustable middle row seat. You probably have seen this on the EX90. The seat can actually raise a bit for young adults, if you will, but we do have a flat floor over here because of that electric platform this car uses, and we have our own climate control system over here in the back for the rear occupants, including buttons for the heated rear seats. Right, we have air vents over here, and we also have this panoramic sunroof that doesn't open and doesn't close, and that's a big no-no in my book. It doesn't have an electrochromatic system that can make it a bit more opaque, and you don't have a textile cover either. So during summer days, I think it's going to get a bit toasty inside this car. Maybe you could buy an accessory later on, I don't know, but it's a bit tricky. And since we have the Bowers and Wilkins sound system on this car, we do have speakers in the headrests, and I have to say the system sounds absolutely brilliant. In terms of legroom, you should know that this seat is not adjusted in my comfortable position. It's a bit further back because the car has comfort access. I'm 6 feet tall and I still fit in the back, right? As for the headroom, no issues whatsoever either. And the seats are actually quite comfortable, these seats in the back, but I do have an issue with the seats up front, and I'm going to tell you about it when we get over there. We also have a new design for the door handle, right? So this is the door handle. This is where you open the door. It's also electrically operated, and this is the button for the windows. Quite an interesting approach from Volvo in this minimalist Swedish approach, if you will. And this is the front end of the car. The same materials are used up front. I think they feel great to the touch. The same ambient light protrudes through this wood trim at night, and I like this cover for the speakers as well. What I don't like is the fact that in order to operate the rear windows, you have to press on this button, right? Because we only have 2 buttons over here. So we've seen this on Volkswagen products before. I don't really like this system. Just add another set of buttons and that would be great. But at least, unlike on the Volkswagen solution, where switching between the front and the rear seats, the rear windows, is done by just touching this area, over here you have to press, so you won't have any accidental triggering of the rear windows instead of the front ones, right? And compared to the XC90, we have a new dashboard layout with new air vents, right? It looks a bit different. We have these seats over here, and as I said, I have a bit of an issue with them. Somehow I always end up sitting on this seam right here. It's a bit, the seat itself, the bottom is a bit stiff for my liking. I like the seat back, it's very comfortable. You can adjust the width and so on, but I don't like this area. It's a bit too stiff for me, and on longer trips that can have an effect on my back. Unlike on the XC90, we have only 1 button over here with more ways of adjusting the seat. So basically you can press this button and switch between different ways of adjusting the seat. Normally, if you move it this way, you adjust the seat back, right? And if you push it forward, you can adjust the position of the seat. But for other features of the seat, you have to press on that button and you can then adjust them. For example, the width of the seat back and many others. Let's hop inside and you will notice that we have the same stocks as on the EX30, right? This is the gear shift lever, if you will, the direction selector, and it's also the button you use to activate the cruise control system, right? And over here we have the wipers, right, front and back, and we have the high beam as well. And the steering wheel does resemble the one on the EX30. 2 with the same buttons on the right, on the left for different functions of the car. And we also have a different setup compared to the XC90, right, with this smaller screen over here for the instrument cluster. It actually has all the info you probably need. So in order to start the car, you only have to press on the brake. We don't have a start button, and then switch into gear. It tells me that the hood is open. I must remember to close it before I leave, right? So you can switch between different ways of showing you the information. We have the Google Maps over here if you want to. In this configuration, the car actually shows you the active driving assistance, right? And it's beeping at me because I didn't close the hood. We also have a different infotainment system, right? So what you see here is a bigger screen, 14.5 inches compared to the 11.2 on the Volvo EX90, but the functionality is the same. Basically, this system uses Android in the background, and it has Qualcomm and NVIDIA hardware. So what I did notice is that it moves a lot better than the one on the new XC90. So it has a lot less lag. So you can actually install apps from the Play Store over here directly into the car. So basically you can install Waze and streaming apps and so on right into the car because it has a 5G SIM on board, right? So you don't really have to use your phone anymore if you're using an Android phone. It doesn't even have Android Auto because it already has Android on board. But if you have an Apple device, you can have Apple CarPlay with a wired connection for now. The climate control buttons are at the bottom over here. So if you push on this button, you can go into the climate control shortcut, right? You can choose the temperature, start the heated steering wheel and the heated seat as well on this side, right? So rather easy to use. If you press for a longer time, you go into the full menu, which right now takes a while to load, right? So you can choose a number of things you can automatically adjust or manually adjust, including for the rear. This is basically the area where you have some shortcuts for your recently used apps, and this area over here changes depending on the most recently used apps as well. So Bluetooth in my case, because I'm listening to music through Bluetooth, and the range and trip computer, right? So this is the average for today, but I'm going to talk about the energy consumption later on. Also, if you want to open the glove box, you have a button over here. On the XC90, you had a physical button. The same difference goes for this. This is now a single button for a number of multimedia functions. So you can press play and pause it. You know, on the XC90, you had a different bar over here. And if you push it to the right and to the left, you go next and back. And I actually love the fact that we still have a physical button for the volume. It means a lot because this audio system makes what is worth every single penny. You probably also noticed that we have a different tweeter design for the Bowers & Wilkins sound system. And of course, at night, we also have interior ambient light over here that looks absolutely brilliant. The build quality is okay. We have two cup holders over here, a wireless charging pad over here, plenty of storage room down here, and an ample armrest with two storage spaces. So basically you can open this up and have a deeper storage space if you wanted to. So yeah, actually it's a pretty good system. And for the Bowers & Wilkins sound system, we have a dedicated app, right? And you can experience the sound. The system also has Dolby Atmos. Basically, you can hear the sound or the music you play in different ways. You can choose the way the car projects the sound inside using the Gothenburg concert hall. It can reproduce the concert hall, or you can choose the car to replicate a stage or maybe a studio. You can learn more about it, right? It has 25 speakers and it is absolutely brilliant. And maybe some more details about it. But overall, this is the best sound system you can get in any car today. Hands down, I would not get either the XC90 or the EX90 without it. To be fair, driving the EX90 feels exactly as you would expect it to, because even though it has ludicrous amounts of power, it is not exactly a sports car per se, and it is not exactly made to be used in that way. It is, by all means and purposes, an electric XC90. That's what it is. That's what it stands for. So from the beginning, you probably have different expectations from it because it has so much power. And when you start driving it, that instant torque you feel all the time makes you feel like a, I don't know, rally driver in some cases. But if you push this car too much, you start to see the cracks in the walls because it's heavy, it's tall, and in my book, it was never designed to be a sports car in any way, shape, or form. In my book, this is the ultimate electric Volvo, and it is the ultimate electric family car for those who can actually afford it. Because there's a reason why Volvo created this car. It created it for that eco-conscious client that wants the best for its family, for his family, for her family, without impacting the environment too much and by adopting an electric lifestyle. Now, when you set off, you notice a couple of things. For example, you notice the fact that you don't have a start button, right? So that's quite annoying, and I don't really like this trend in the auto industry right now, where they simply cut out the start button. Basically, the start sequence means you get inside the car, you press on the brake pedal, and you switch into drive. That's it. The car sets off. What's interesting is that it doesn't really tell you that it's on, right? So it's completely silent inside, and all you have to do is press on the go faster pedal, on the right pedal, right? And when you set off for a couple of seconds, I don't know why, the steering system is completely numb. So it feels like it's not being powered on. Then as soon as you cover, I don't know, 2 or 3 meters, it kicks in so you can actually use it, right? Quite an interesting approach from Volvo. I don't really know why they did that, but it's okay in my book. Then you can also adjust the level of effort you have to put into the steering, right? So you can adjust it to be in comfort mode or in, let's just check it to be sure I got it right. So you have 2 settings for the steering feel, right? Soft and firm. I don't really see a huge difference between them. So I used soft because, as I said, this is not exactly supposed to be a sports car. So I don't see why I would actually want to struggle to turn the steering wheel. There's also a couple of settings for the one pedal drive system, which is basically the regenerative brakes. And I actually like this setup from Volvo because it allows you to turn off one pedal drive completely, so the car will coast whenever you take your foot off the go faster pedal. Then you have the auto feature, which basically means the car will have regenerative brakes on dependent on the traffic situation around you. For example, I have a scooter in front of me right now. So if I take my foot off the go faster pedal, the car will coast until I get close enough to that scooter in order to start regenerative braking, right? So now it's braking on its own, but it will not bring you to a complete stop. You have to press on the brake pedal to do that. And then there's the one pedal drive on feature, right? So basically, whenever you take your foot off the go faster pedal, the car starts to use regenerative brakes to the maximum, right? And that can induce some I don't know, nausea to some passengers, but it will bring you to a complete standstill. I'm using the auto feature. I think it works best, and I think it's the one I would recommend. And then there's also the performance all-wheel drive button. So you don't really have driving modes in this car. You set off, you drive in normal mode. You can choose, if you want to, you can choose a range optimizer option, which is basically the equivalent of an eco mode in other cars, but I didn't really feel all that the car behaving all that different whenever this range optimizer is turned on, and I didn't really notice any significant energy consumption reduction, right? But if you don't want to use this range optimizer, you only have one driving mode, and you have the performance mode. That's where both electric motors are turned on at the same time and all the time, and that's when the go faster pedal turns into a very sharp blade. So yes, between the normal driving mode and the performance mode, you do feel a difference, and I definitely felt it. However, you should know that in both all-wheel drive models, even though the car has one electric motor for each axle, it will deactivate the rear one most of the time to make it as efficient as possible. But whenever the car feels some slippage, or whenever you're launching from standstill, it will use both motors for added better traction and for more performance, right? But other than that, when you're just cruising and so on, the car will only use the front motor alone. So that's only to cut down on energy consumption. So since I mentioned that, as I said, I did my real life range test with this car, as I did with a lot of other cars before. In the description of this video, you will find a spreadsheet with almost all of the electric cars I tested and the results I got with them. How do I do these range tests? Well, I drive around town for 100 kilometers with brakes and everything. I take a break. I let the car cool off to heat up again and so on. And then I go on a series of B roads driving at average speeds of around 60 to 70 kilometers an hour. And then I hop on the highway and I keep the car at 130 kilometers an hour. If you've been watching my videos, you probably know my testing sequence already. So what are the real life range results? Before I say that, mind you, we have only 10 degrees Celsius outside, so it was pretty cold. We are running on winter tires and we have a red code for wind, a wind advisory in effect right now. So these won't be ideal results, but I think the car did pretty well. Now Volvo says you should get up to 600 kilometers of range out of this car. That's quite a stretch, especially in these conditions. Around town, I saw an average energy consumption of 23 to 24 kilowatt hours. So you will get 400 kilometers of range rather easily out of it. Then outside the city limits on B roads, I saw an average energy consumption between 21 and 22 kilowatt hours. So you will get about 450 kilometers of range easily, but still pretty far off from that 600 kilometer claim. And then on the highway, things definitely took a turn. That's where I had an average energy consumption of about 33 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers covered. I kept the car at 130 kilometers an hour. The average speed at the end of my test cycle was 123. So yeah, that's quite a lot. But considering the size of this car, I think it would be totally acceptable. It's 2.8 tons in weight, right? So it's not the most aerodynamic car, and I didn't turn on any efficient mode or anything. The car doesn't even have those. So I turned the heat on and everything. So whenever I'm doing these range tests, I'm not doing them to get the best numbers out of the car, but I'm doing them to get realistic numbers, right? So 300 kilometers of range on the highway, I think that's okay. Volvo says that the top charging power available for this car is 250 kilowatts, but the average charging curve should be about 170. So 10 to 80% charge should take about 30 minutes. So I think that's okay, but you need to find a 250 kilowatt charger in order to get that charging curve and the charging time. So that might be a stretch for people in certain areas of the world. But overall, I think it's doing great. And what I noticed is that the car is limited to 180 kilometers an hour, as are all modern day Volvos, and you can reach that top speed very easily and very fast. Overtaking is incredibly easy in all conditions. You actually have to be quite careful with the throttle, especially in performance mode, because the car has a tendency to break traction rather easily. It will understeer in corners if you push it too hard, but overall it does maintain its composure really nice thanks to this suspension, which by the way is absolutely brilliant. It's not only comfortable on these 22-inch wheels, but it is incredibly quiet. And I can't believe that Volvo is not offering this air suspension as standard on all of the EX90 models, because they are very heavy. So I'm quite curious to drive an EX90 without this air suspension to see how it compares. I think it's going to have a much less refined ride overall. But what I was mostly surprised of is how refined and quiet this car is, especially at highway speeds. So I'm using a sound meter during all my tests on the highway with every single car. And what I noticed is that this car had an average of 76 decibels at 130 kilometers an hour during this strong wind advisory. And that was lower than the 78 decibels I recorded with the BMW 7 Series. So yes, you could say that this car is quieter than a 7 Series at highway speeds. But even around town, it is incredibly quiet. All cars get double glazed windows up front. The windshield is double glazed, so you have great sound insulation inside. And you also have this Bowers & Wilkins sound system, which is absolutely brilliant. It's so good that sometimes it brought a tear to my eye listening to certain songs. It's so good that it's making every single song in my playlist feel like it's a brand new audition for me. Feel like every single song is absolutely brilliant if you play it through this sound system. So I cannot recommend it enough, right? So overall, what's the takeaway? Basically, I love this car. I love this car. There are some things that could be improved. For example, I actually like having a physical key for my car. I don't like all this smartphone, key card madness that's taking over the industry right now. I think some buttons should be kept on board, especially since we're talking about Volvo, right? So there's a bit of a paradox here, because Volvo is taking a lot of pride in the safety of its cars, and I'm pretty sure that in case of a crash, this car will be incredibly safe. But it has all sorts of safety systems on board that should avoid that crash in the first place, or maybe mitigate a lot of the speed. But at the same time, you have basic functions like adjusting your side mirrors or your steering wheel hidden in a menu. That's very distracting. So yeah, there's a bit of contradiction here. But overall, I love this car. I absolutely love it. But we have to talk about pricing and rivals before we say goodbye to it. So pricing for this car depends on the market you're in. Over here, we only get the all-wheel drive versions. So pricing for the EX90 starts at 100,000 euros for the 408 horsepower all-wheel drive version. The performance version gets a price hike as well. It starts at 112,000 euros. This one, with all the bells and whistles on, including the Bowers & Wilkins sound system, has a price tag of 124,000 euros. So yeah, it's not cheap. But then again, not too long ago, I had the Volvo EX90 T8 for testing purposes, also a fully spec'd car, and it had a price tag of 116,000 euros. So between them, we have a price delta of about 8,000 euros. And considering the amount of extra tech you get on this version, I would totally get this one, right? It's going to be more efficient. Yes, it's an electric version. It's going to be faster. It's going to be more comfortable. I think it is more comfortable than the XC90, so I would prefer this one. In terms of rivals from other car brands, as I said, if we're talking about the 5-seat configuration, we're talking about rivals like the BMW iX, a very good car as well. We're talking about the Audi Q8 e-tron, which is also a very good car, but in my experience, it has been a bit thirsty or less energy efficient compared to this one. We are talking about, if you're taking into consideration the 7 or the 6-seat configuration, we're talking about the Kia EV9 or the Tesla Model X. So I'm curious which one you would get in this segment. That said, this has been my review of the Volvo EX90. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Until next time, of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep this channel alive.